Because I've been trying to get Gavin Newsom to allow water to come. You'd have tremendous water up there. They sent it out to the Pacific because they're trying to protect a tiny little fish, which is in other areas, by the way, called the smelt.
Donald Trump is battling his old nemesis, Gavin Newsom, again, sparing absolutely no time after the fires broke out in Palisades, California, taking to Truth Social to act like he knows anything about how to stop wildfires. I'm sure you all remember last time his idea was to rake the leaves out of the forest.
We've got to take care of the floors, the floors of the forests. Very important. And much different. We're a forest nation. He called it a forest nation. And they spend a lot of time on raking and cleaning and doing things, and they don't have any problem.
Well, it looks like over the last 4 years, nobody told him that that's not how fires work. Before we get into it, make sure to like the video and double check that you're subscribed. Donald Trump was quick to blame Gavin Newsom for the fires that are spreading over California.
Okay, so as we talk about the better angels and people helping people, we also know that there is a counterpoint to that, and sometimes it can be like this. You're seeing here on Truth Social, which is the social media platform of the president-elect Donald Trump. He is responding to all this by placing blame on the California governor, Gavin Newsom, for not signing a water restoration declaration. So he says this: now the ultimate price is being paid. He says he will demand that this incompetent governor, and these are the words of President-elect Donald Trump, allow beautiful, clean, fresh water to flow into California. He is to blame for this, close quote.
Trump's giving us a little sneak preview of what we have in store for the next 4 years, and it looks like it's a lot more of the same pie we got the first time. I think they kind of buried the lead there with Trump's rant. They failed to cover the most hilarious part. Governor Gavin Newsom, nice, refused to sign the water restoration declaration put before him that would have allowed millions of gallons of water from excess rain and snow melt from the north to flow daily into many parts of California, including the areas that are currently burning in a virtually apocalyptic way. He wanted to protect an essentially worthless fish called a smelt by giving it less water. It didn't work. But didn't care about the people of California.
Because I've been trying to get Gavin Newsom to allow water to come. You'd have tremendous water up there. They sent it out to the Pacific because they're trying to protect a tiny little fish, which is in other areas, by the way, called the smelt. And for the sake of a smelt, they have no water. They had no water in the fire hydrants today in Los Angeles. It was a terrible thing. And we're going to get that done. It's going to finally be done. I got it done from the federal side, and he didn't want to sign it, but it's not going to happen again like that.
So a couple of things here. What the hell is the Water Restoration Declaration? What excess rain? There's been very little rainfall in California. What's all this talk about fish? The only essentially worthless fish in Trump's orbit is Rudy Giuliani. Okay, I did some research, and it turns out that Trump is probably referencing this executive order that was signed by Gavin Newsom that held back some of the water that flows from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta to the San Francisco Bay. That water will instead stay in the reservoirs and is used for farming and for the residents of Southern California. The reason why, and I think this is what he's talking about with less water, is because the slower the water flow means it's easier for baby salmon and Delta smelt to be able to make it upstream. I like that he didn't mention the salmon. It's probably because he was like, well, I like salmon, I like sushi.
This is a true tragedy, and it's a mistake of the governor, and you could say the administration. They don't have any water. They didn't have water in the fire hydrants. They don't have water. And yet they have, the water comes from, where? Up north. And it comes down at levels, they get millions and millions of barrels of gallons of water that they have, and they send it out into the Pacific. For the Pacific, it's like a drop, it's nothing. But for California, it would take care of the whole state. So what's happened is a tragedy, and the governor has not done a good job.
But the funniest part about this is that the executive order would have actually made water more accessible to Southern California. Because this whining that Trump is doing around there being no water in the fire hydrants is because the water pressure is low in the area. And the water pressure is low in the area because they're fighting fires.
What happened in Palisades? We have 3 large water tanks, about 1 million gallons each. We ran out of water in the first tank at about 4:45 p.m. yesterday. We ran out of water on the second tank about 8:30 p.m. and the third tank about 3 a.m. this morning. Those tanks help with the pressure on the fire hydrants and the hills of Palisades. And because we were pushing so much water in our trunk line, and so much water was being used before it can get to the tanks, we were not able to fill the tanks fast enough. So the consumption of water was faster than we can provide water in our trunk line. So I want to make sure that you understand there's water on the trunk line. It just cannot get up the hill because we cannot fill the tanks fast enough. And we cannot lower the amount of water that we provide to the fire department in order to supply the tanks because we're balancing firefighting with water. So we have our operations people on the water side at the command post with the fire department, helping them with tactics to ensure that we can provide as much water as we can find to our first responders. What are we doing now? We're sending about 20 water tanks for our construction crews full of water to support the fire department. We identify other areas in our system where our tankers can refill. It takes about 30 minutes to refill about 4,000 gallons of water, and we're constantly moving that water to the fire department to get them as much water as we can.
So, as you heard from the officials in the area, the problem is not about the amount of water. The issue is that the water isn't high up on the hill, so they don't get the water pressure in order to push the water through the system. But instead of providing help or just good thoughts and prayers, which is the very least that he can do, what does Trump do? Our incoming president. He takes the opportunity to politicize a disaster in order to win a couple of points on Gavin Newsom. I swear gruesome Newsom lives rent-free in Trump's brain. He thinks more about Gavin Newsom than he does about Melania.
Yeah, so what he's talking about is an endangered fish that is at the center of a very long water war in California about how much water can flow out of the delta in Northern California and go to Southern California. Like trying to explain water politics in California is almost impossible. It goes back generations, and this tiny smelt is part of it. I think that the larger issue here is that the future president is seemingly trying to start a feud with the governor of a state in the middle of a crisis, a crisis that is being driven by Santa Ana winds, and the fact that it hasn't rained. And it hasn't rained. It's been very dry in California. This is a dynamic that has existed in this state forever, and it's why. It is a beautiful state, and it is also a state of tragedy repeatedly.
But despite being in the middle of a literal natural disaster, Gavin Newsom had to spend a little bit of time to fight back. His press office tweeted, "There is no such document as the Water Restoration Declaration. That is pure fiction. You know Trump just made that up and stole the Emancipation Proclamation alliteration." Turns out Trump is a ghostwriter for Drake. The governor is focused on protecting people, not playing politics, and making sure firefighters have all the resources they need. It's honestly kind of sad that they even had to go out and say this, but it looks like Trump is right back to his old ways.
During past natural disasters, when Donald Trump was in office, that he would ask his team how many people supported him in that state and what else they could do for him in order to receive federal funds and federal assistance.
I'm just hoping that planet Earth is a little kinder to us over the next 4 years. America is sick with a parasite and we just can't handle another flu. I'm Tony Hinderman with Really American, and I'll catch you next time.